Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Ad Talk. This is episode 26. And this episode is going to be very special because we have a special guest on the show today. We are bringing Elly Charland on, and she's an amazing part of the ad class team. She's one of the performance marketing strategists here. She knows a lot about what's working right now, a lot about what's working organically, a lot about what's working on the creative side of things. And so this episode is really going to be all about what ads are working right now in 2025 and what you guys as listeners can pull from this to make your ads work better too. So Elly, we're so stoked that you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Really happy to be here. I always joke that I'm kind of the unofficial Gen Z brain rot correspondent of what's happening over on social media. So I'm honored to be able to share some of my skills with the world today. I did also bring, as you guys have seen, but I had to bring my Holding Space for Defying Gravity mug. Shout out, Paul. Thanks for that. But yeah, just to touch on some of the trends happening on social media today, I thought it was very appropriate.
So awesome. So awesome.
I don't think it's an unofficial title at this point. I think it's actually baked in. So.
I'll have to update my LinkedIn.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. Well, yeah, guys. So let's talk about why ad creatives are so important right now. I think that there's a lot of talk, when people come to us and they hire us to run their ads, it's like, okay, what really matters here? Is it the messaging? Is it the copy? Is it the ads themselves? And do I have to have this big production team to make my ads really good? So Elly or Matthew, whichever of you wants to jump in on this, why do you guys feel like the creative specifically right now is so important as we're moving into 2025?
Well, off the bat, I think a big thing to consider, just even from the ad side, is a lot of our targeting options are going away. So a lot of the ability that we have to kind of find the right people with purely just audience location targeting, anything else like that, are getting reduced by the platforms. And so a lot of that is now reliant on the creatives and kind of what we're saying in there to resonate with people a lot more like directly. And so it really depends on what kind of creative you have running. And that's also typically what we consider to be like the biggest lever that we have to make a difference inside of those accounts. So the kind of videos that you put out there are more important than ever. But I think that does seem really intimidating to people who don't have that super professional team. But be reassured, there are cell phone videos filmed in the back of the car that have generated millions of dollars. And there are professional, gorgeous videos that have flopped. So anyone can win. It just really depends on the content more than anything.
It's so true. It's one of the things that I tell most new hires at the agencies. I'm like, a lot of people, and I mention this to clients too, is when people start thinking of, okay, what are the ads that you guys have spent the most money on and what are the ads that work the best? A lot of people think it's this like super high production thing of like, you need a big studio and like 4 different cameras and all the bells and whistles. And what's so funny is like some of the ads that we've spent the most money on, I'm talking like multiple millions of dollars on these ads, are like someone walking in their backyard, like talking to their iPhone. But I mean, it's like the most simple stuff. But it works. It just works, so super.
Absolutely. And it's interesting too. So you guys know this, but I actually came from advertising background in the sense like I went to school for this, and more in that side of it, they really drive into like, oh, it has to be so like meta, break into the, and you do, you want to like think about your audience and think about, is this going to be impactful, and frame it that way. But I think, you look at all these beautiful, gorgeous ads like during the Super Bowl or during all these awards, and then you get into the real world or things like media buying and advertising, like for these types of businesses, and you expect the most beautiful thing to crush it. That's not always the case. And it's really surprising. And it's like kind of an adjustment when you come from the kind of more zazzy advertising world into what's actually working for real businesses in real time. And I think those types of customers that they're going for versus just like impressing ad panel judges, the real stuff works. Cell phone videos, and there's a lot of that type of stuff that actually ends up crushing, and it's not really what you would expect. So that was something I kind of had to learn my first few years really getting into this industry. Is like, what do you mean the ugly thing is winning? Ugh. But then that was money. So, you kind of follow that.
Gosh, it's really interesting. I love that it's like almost like the Oscars, you have these like really like small budget, Honora won Best Picture that was made for $6 million. And then, you've got something like Wicked that was made for probably like 250 million and, it doesn't win anything. So that's rough funny.
Or rock.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to touch a nerve there.
Yes, it's bad.
Okay, so let's talk about our favorite ads that we've seen recently. I think people would get a kick out of kind of hearing some of our favorites, since we're kind of we see a lot of them, right? And I'd be curious to know what you guys most recently have seen in the ad world that really impressed you, or maybe that was your most recent favorite ad.
Yeah, I think one thing that we're starting to see really be effective is kind of like this sort of mix of the two ideas of organic and more direct messaging advertising. So I'm thinking, kind of scripts that you would, we've put a lot of spend behind in the past, where it's that literally like selfie style, walking in your backyard kind of stuff. That stuff still has a place, but I'm starting to see more and more success with putting a viral hook on the front of something. And, whether that's taking something that's working organically. I've got like one particular client in mind that I'm thinking of, which is a restaurant point of sale service. And we've got very direct messaging ad scripts. And then we've got something like really funny on the front end, just to like grab engagement and that kind of stuff. Like there's a really funny one with like Timothy Chalamet. And obviously we didn't get Timothy Chalamet in the studio for it, so that boy expensive. But I'm just seeing like a really interesting mix of what works organically and what has proven to work in a paid setting, and sort of like fusing the two. So that's a lot of what I'm seeing outside of, trying lots of different things. Obviously we need to test a ton of stuff to see what works, but that seems to be a consistent kind of avenue for success. So yeah, Elly, what about you?
Yeah, I think across the board, it's pattern interrupt, which probably isn't super surprising just because there's so much noise, and not only so much paid content, but just so much organic content that is constantly being fed to you through a fire hose, that everyone is trying to do pattern interrupt. Like thinking on a larger scale stuff, like it wasn't the highest quality ad, but genuinely the one that I remember from the Super Bowl was the Cottonelle one telling me to go to the bathroom, because it's just like, in context, it's a pattern interrupt. It's like referencing something that's actually going on in the moment in your real life. Or if we look at other things, like some of our clients, do certain things to purposefully generate comments and get people engaged in that way. There was a Coors ad, I think, that they started doing this ahead of the Super Bowl, but in their Times Square ads, they actually intentionally spelled something wrong so that way people would get mad and start tweeting about it. And then they said that they had a case of the Mondays, and that was like a case of Coors. But so there's a lot of these little things that brands are starting to do to try and break through the noise, low key, a little bit of rage bait as well, which, do with that what you will. But there's so many different kinds of pattern interrupt that people are really playing with here just to break through the noise that we're seeing. So whether that's a viral hook, misspelling something, wearing a Thanos glove just for no reason in the middle of the video, so someone comments like, why is nobody talking about this? They want. So I'm seeing a lot of that type of stuff, and that's something that brands can easily replicate, or, borrow a viral hook from social media on the organic side and then integrate into their paid ads.
There was one ad that I was thinking of in particular, which obviously isn't in our niche, but it's Aldi advertising their new slides, and they're riffing off when Drake's like home was like invaded by a drone, and he throws like a shoe at it, and there's literally like, it's just some guy like walking out of Aldi with his like cart and a bag in the cart, and the drone comes by and they grab an Aldi slide, throw it, and then the slide like stops on screen and it's like now available for $6.99. Just like, it's great. I love it. I'm not saying we can necessarily do that kind of stuff, but we can definitely take the idea of what they're attempting to do and then like replicate it in a way that niche audiences that we're advertising would respond to.
I think the key thing with that though too is do it in a genuine way. Like people don't want to feel like they've just been deceived. They want to feel like they're in on the joke, or they're spotting something or noticing something and they're part of this observation. I think where some of that starts to go wrong, and not to go like, too far to the left, is things like Duolingo. They had such a strong, I would arguably say one of the strongest organic socials that I've seen in a long time that's targeting Gen Z people. Like, it's learning a language, and which can be incredibly boring and very frustrating. And as someone that has a 245-day streak on Duolingo, let's go. With college, I still barely speak French, but I did end up joining Duolingo after all this time. However, when there's things that are meant to just, be shock value with no real explanation, there's no why, like, for example, killing off the owl. That was the best mascot that we've seen in my recent organic social history, and now for no reason it's dead, and it just feels like a gag just to get more attention when they already have it. So there's certain things where if it feels disingenuous, or they're clearly using AI in a weird deceptive way that's just like slop, people just are disengaged and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to ignore you now, because why would I pay attention to that? You're just trying to like get my attention in like an annoying type of way. So I think there's ways to do it right, and there's ways that can push people away from your brand.
For sure. For sure. And I think, I want to get into that in conversation more, talking a little about like AI slop, as you just called it, versus getting back into just like the humanness, and just bringing back real world people, and I think my favorite ad, I'm gonna go ahead and call out one of our own ads at ad class, but I think my favorite one recently has been this doctor ad that we filmed at the last retreat, and not specifically because it was a comedy like sketch type ad, or a comedy skit type ad, but not because of the actual content, but because towards the end of the ad, one of the things that just kind of naturally happened because our team was in person is we just kind of started joking around and dancing, and then we were like, let's just all get in front of the camera and dance and like chat the call to action at the end of this, just for kicks and giggles. And so everyone basically just got got in front of the camera. We had like, I don't know, 15, 20 people just dancing in front of the camera, just to say like, hey, like, go ahead and click the link, basically, right? It was actually paintinmyads.com, which we're working.
Myads.com.
Paintinmyads.com.
Yeah. Soon to be released. So we basically did that, and the reason it was my favorite is because I felt like the end of that felt so real, and just like, okay, these are real people, it's a real team, they're having fun together, and the people who watch that ad are going to get to see that and connect with that. And I think that's the cool part, or at least that's my what I enjoy about where I hope advertisers and agencies like us can kind of steer our clients, is like go back to that. Whereas I feel like there's this just kind of push, this really hard push lately for just like get as much AI stuff out there. And I think we should be using AI. Like, don't hear that the wrong way, but if we're relying on that just kind of to be the only thing that people see on the front end of our stuff, it's going to turn into that slop feel and just very disingenuous, right? So, sure. So yeah, that's my favorite ad. That
was a fun ad. That's
And I think on the AI swap side of it really quickly, like there is a difference. To me, it's more of if you take the time to come up with the idea and the AI is the execution versus the AI is doing all the thinking for you. Like, you want to have a concept, you want to be able to understand like who are you speaking to and why? What's the point? Like, what do I need help to create? Maybe you're not a master Adobe designer who can fabricate this whole world, or you don't have the time. That's fine. But I think when it comes to like letting the AI do the thinking for you, a big part of what I'm seeing online is people just wanting to get back to like genuinely hearing what's going on in people's lives, like 2010 levels. I just had a sandwich on Twitter. They're like, yes, I can't show me a picture of your sandwich. Like the person that I follow on Twitter that I think I love the most, and yes, I'm still calling it Twitter, is that literally just does 4 pictures a day of, I went on a 15-mile walk, kilometers, whatever, 15-kilometer walk, and here's my dinner for the day. And they just do that every single day. And it's just called like a really cool girl who walks. And that type of stuff is like just such a palate cleanser from being just inundated with constant other random stuff, especially on there. So I think getting back to, AI can be the execution, but if you still are able to share like real valuable pieces of your day, or of insights from what your industry and things like that, that's totally fine. It's more of the execution of it that's totally fine.
What I want to jump in on there too is a lot of what you just mentioned feels like a lot of the organic content that a lot of us see as we're kind of just scrolling through either Instagram or TikTok or your platform of choice. But I think what I'm curious about is, do you feel like, and this is a question that we get all the time from our clients or prospects, is how does organic tie into the ads that I want to run? Is it important for me to be focusing time and energy on organic? How does that kind of content differ from what I should be putting out on the ad side of things? So I'd love to hear you guys' opinion on like, what would you tell somebody who's kind of curious about that divide, right, between organic versus ads, and what does that look like?
For sure. I think the first thing you need to do is recognize the difference in the type of audience you're talking to. So, organic, there's going to be a lot more, familiarity usually with, either yourself or the brand. And then for a paid ad, there's less of that, unless you're doing some like retargeting or something and doing some warm traffic. So I think the messaging in itself needs to be like prompted around how you're speaking to your audience, essentially. So I feel like with organic, you have more of an opportunity to be more of yourself a lot of times, or at least that's how we feel. And then with something more cold, like a paid ad, you have to be a lot more like intentional and targeted and scripted in a sense. But I feel like there's space. I'm holding space for both, and I feel like there's just like this need for sincerity in messaging in general, which I think has come around not just because of AI, but I think just in general with COVID and just accepting people's feelings and that we all have difficulties and struggles, and not everything needs to be this like polished thing. I think like what you were saying about the ad that we recorded, Caleb. People want to see reality. They want to see like not the polish, not the scripted. They want to see who people are. And I feel like we can use organic and paid differently, but sort of connected, I'm thinking of another client of mine. Some of their top ads is literally just like the brand face talking to students he's helped, like one-on-one, like in-person events, and just like putting an arm around them and being like, tell the people what he did, like what's happening in your life, that kind of stuff. There is just like this need for sincerity and honesty, I feel like, which comes across so well in organic and sometimes has been a struggle in paid. So I think we're moving more towards that on a paid sense because of this trust recession that we keep talking about, especially. So that's my perspective. Would love to know what Elly thinks too.
Yeah, typically what we're telling our clients is the ads, to your point, Matthew, they need to be really intentional. They're there with a goal. There's a CTA. We're trying to direct them into your funnel or towards whatever offer that we're pushing. There's a reason we're spending money on those types of ads to get people somewhere. When it comes to organic, I always tell clients, like, look, you don't have to be someone that's posting 80 times a day and, oh my gosh, I need to go viral. Really what you need to do is get people to know, like, and trust you there. And really all we're trying to get people to do is if they go there and look that you're a real person, you're a real company, you know what you're talking about. And part of that can be just vulnerability and showcasing like who you are as a person. It could just be you posting your morning coffee on your story. Like it can be something super simple. I think when people are going to organic pages, they want to feel like they're following a person, or at least they're getting something entertaining or educational, just some kind of crumb of actual vulnerability from somebody. And I think that's where the authenticity piece comes in. Is it doesn't have to be you just like screaming, this is who I am, like 80,000 times. You can see who you are over time by showcasing parts of your life. And I learned this in school in advertising, but something that I always tell people is you can't create insights on a world you're not a part of. So talk about the world you're a part of. Go be a part of it. If you are, if you're a roofing contractor, go talk about roofing. If you're somebody who loves puzzles, show yourself doing a puzzle, talk about that. Organic is meant to just be a little bit more personal and a little bit more of, hey, here's who I am. Sometimes it'll be educational. Sometimes it'll just be a graphic of a fun thing that I saw. Sometimes maybe it's my morning coffee, but really just for the algorithm side, they just want to see that you're active. So what you post, you want to have some value in there, but organic is just there for people to know that you're a real person, your company is active, and you're somebody that they might actually want to interact with and potentially even move forward into the business with. So,
yep. Super helpful. Super helpful. I think just one thing I'll add, and then we'll move off of the organic topic, is I think for me, and I find this really interesting, is the stuff that has actually stopped my scroll. And I know I'm probably not like my scrolling behavior is probably a lot different than like most people's scrolling behavior because I do this for a living.
Specifically Elly's kind of scrolling behavior.
Whatever do you mean?
I guess what I'm saying is that like obviously we do ads for a living, right? So I'm going to probably look at like ads differently than like someone else who does it, right? And so I think what I was trying to get at there is when I'm scrolling, the things lately that I've actually stopped to look at in terms of ads have been things that feel more native and organic to the platform. And so I think one cool thing and like one little like quick tip or takeaway from this is if your content and like the creative that you're filming almost feels kind of out of place for the platform that you're running it on, like it feels like someone gets to it and it's like very clearly an ad, it kind of just, at least for me, it's this thing where I'm like, oh, I know that that's just another thing, and I just kind of move past it. But even if I see sponsored on something, but it starts with a video that feels like it's like, hey, this person's filming this almost like they would a normal like reel for Instagram or for TikTok, and they're using things like the text from the platform or like normal transitions from the platform, or they're putting themselves on like a almost that like the like transparent green screen thing where they're like a floating head around, right? Like those types of things feel very native, and when I see that, I'm almost more willing to watch the ad because I'm like, oh wait, this kind of feels like it's supposed to be here, you know? And I think that that's another thing that advertisers just don't really like consider all the time. And one last quick tip in the same note is one of the best performing ads that I've launched. This is for a stock trading offer that I help with. One of the best performing ads is I literally just took a story using the normal like Instagram gradient background that comes from like just typing on like a normal text story, and I just wrote some like a basically probably like a 2 sentence statement that I thought would kind of attract the audience. That ad literally is just plain text on a gradient background, and I put it in story format, and it just looks like a story that someone might have posted in 2 seconds. And that ad is so simple and it's crushing. And I think it's because people stop to read it because for a split second they're like, oh, this is just another story that I can kind of check out. What is this person saying, right? And so if you're not trying to like fit your ads into the platform that you're running on, that's something that I would at least try if you haven't yet.
One last quick note on that too. That's also where I'm saying like don't create, it's hard to create stuff you're not a part of. So if you're a 55-year-old roofing contractor trying to make viral TikToks, that's maybe not your zone. And that's okay. It's not to say you can never succeed on TikTok, but like go where you know and do what you know. It's not to say you can never expand and never experiment. That's absolutely fine, especially on organic. But if you're, go where these things make sense.
Yes. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
And go where your audience is.
Yeah, that's important too. That you couldn't do. Yeah. That's one of the things that we help people on when they sign on with ad passes. We actually talk through like where do we feel like the target market hangs out for this, and like what channel makes the most sense. And that's one thing we talk a lot about is like not being kind of just a one trick pony forever with your marketing. It's important to make one platform work first. But this whole idea of like, I'm just going to only run ads on one channel for the rest of my life and only stick here. It's like, you're kind of, cutting your legs off, right? It's like, there's so much opportunity to get in front of like other ideal prospects, right? If you just kind of expand out and think about where they're actually hanging out, So one more question I want to ask to you guys is and unless there's anything else you guys really want to hit here, but I think one thing that could be cool as like a final topic is if someone listening to this wants to make their ads more profitable or they want to make their ads convert more, what's like the biggest tip that you would give them to try out right now with their ad creative? Curious what you guys would say to that.
One thing I would say that people kind of underestimate is motion and multiple locations. I know it's like extra effort, but in the same way that we all love that doctor ad, but it's also because like you're willing to dress up as a doctor in a silly little $4 outfit and dance around with everybody. Like I think that's something where in a sense like ads are an intrusion into people's lives to some degree. And obviously we hope to add value not only through entertainment or education purposes, but ultimately down the line when they move forward into the offer. But there is an essence of like, if you're willing to go the extra mile and film in a couple different locations or be a little bit vulnerable and, share some information, share some value, that goes a long way with people because instead of just demanding something from them, in a sense, you're offering something to them. So if you're willing to go to a few different locations, put on a silly outfit, try something a little fun, obviously make sure you're still speaking to your audience and you're hitting all of those points. But I think that's something that goes a long way and it buys a bit of trust with people because you're willing to at least put yourself out there and go a little bit further than maybe some of the other people in your niche.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I think, on top of, not relying on the AI slop, as we like talked about, that's a big one. One, like make iterations on what is working and like try new stuff with that, whether that's like a new hook or like a viral hook attempt. I'm not saying like go full TikTok and try and like just rip off a direct trend, but like understand why people are responding to something and then try and emulate that in a way that makes sense for you, and one way that AI could be helpful is, using ChatGPT or DeepSeek or whatever to like generate ideas for trying stuff with not actually like the creation element. I think that would be helpful. And honestly, just having like a really, I know this is getting into like the very nitty gritty of it, but having very good conversations and feedback with your sales team, you know, people that are having like conversations with leads, understanding objections, understanding why they close or why they don't close, understanding where they're at, and using that information well to speak to them. And you can do that in creative ways. It doesn't need to be just like, hey, I heard that you are struggling with your show up rates and like stuff like this. It doesn't need to be like dry as unbuttered bread, you know. But if you take the information that your sales team are receiving on a daily basis and you're able to form ideas with that and then bring some creativity into it and think of ways that you could, you know, talk about show up rates, being like, maybe you start with like a phone call sound and no one's picking up or something. I don't know. But you sort of like start to think creatively about how to engage someone's current problems and what you can do to get ahead of that objection. So you can get them hooked on the ad and then speak to them more directly as the ad continues, and then obviously go through the funnel and that kind of stuff. But using that information is going to be critical. Like, you can make a viral video. Well, it's not easy to make a viral video, but you can try and make a viral video. If it's not communicating the right message, it's not going to have the right outcome.
One thing on there too that I, obviously consult the ad experts, wink, wink. But something that I do, such as ad class, if you're interested. But something that I do find helpful, and I think clients maybe don't do this as much too, especially when they're doing organic or even some in-house ads, is ask people that don't know anything about your brand. Ask people that are outside and completely objective. Is this interesting? Does this make sense to you? Obviously, within your NDAs and whatever makes sense. But I do think getting that objective perspective is really helpful sometimes, because we're so ingrained in the details of our offers and, okay, well, show up rates and this, and this. Joe from Montana doesn't care. Like is it going to be interesting to him today? Is this going to cut through the noise? Is this going to make sense? And I think sometimes zooming out in that way, or also trying things on organic first and seeing if it resonates with people. Does it resonate with the audience that already follows you as a test? And then you can pull what's working from social into ads and use that as a testing ground, because they are going to be a little bit more objective. But, just run it by people who don't know and who might be a little bit more zoomed out, because they can give you some good perspective too.
One little funny story that I want to tell here is, then this is a shout out to Jamil Damji, good friend of mine. And he's probably one of my favorite, like, when it comes to getting ads out there that make you laugh, and just, and I had so much fun making ads with him. And I want to bring up a specific story, because Matthew, you kind of talked about like, having maybe like a boring topic or something that's like, hey, like our close rate's not, where it needs to be or whatever, right? Like, if there's something that's really dull, sometimes it's hard for like some of our clients to think through, like, well, how can I turn that into an ad? Because that's just so boring. Like, no one wants to hear about that thing. But what's cool is, like, if you really just sit down and think about the pain points that your target market or your ideal prospect is going through, you can have some fun with it. And one fun example of that is like, an ad that we did with Jamil back in the day. It was about cold calling specifically. He was talking about how like cold calling sucks, right? And like, you don't want to have to do cold calling. There's a better way to get in front of your leads instead of doing cold calling. And that sounds like the most boring topic ever, right? Like, if I just said, hey, let's come up with an ad about cold calling, it's like, that sucks, right? But we meet with Jamil and we come up with this amazing idea, where the ad starts with him literally like in a freezer, and he's got like icicles coming out of his nostrils, and he's like got ice just like coming out, and he's like sitting here freezing, and he's like got his phone, and he's like trying to talk like to like basically cold call people as he's sitting in this freezer. And it's just different, right? And it was funny. And it's like, if anybody has had to deal with cold calling, it's a way to bring it up that's not boring, right? And so I think there's to that point, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but if you sit down and just really think about the pain points, think about, okay, how can I come at this in a way that just feels a little bit different? And Elliot, to your point, is like a pattern interrupt, right? This is just something it's completely different, right? And so I love Jamil. That ad was so funny. And he had so many other good ones. I mean, I could sit here for like 10 minutes and talk about
That's what I was saying too about like that little extra piece of vulnerability and fun. Like he's willing to sit in a freezer and like fake shiver and shake and get all of these icicles on his face. He'll paint himself blue like a genie. He'll dress up in an astronaut outfit. He'll put on a skirt. He'll do whatever. He'll do whatever it takes to make sure you hear the message that he wants you to hear, which is I can help you and there's a better way. So I think that little extra piece of vulnerability on his side, it, you know, not only is it fun to watch and it's entertaining, but it earns that extra piece of trust is like, okay, this guy's willing to do this. Maybe I'll at least go check it out.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think it also helps having someone like Jamil in front of a camera. You know, we can't all be Jamils. You know, he's one of my favorite things I saw him record was literally just like a pre-webinar show-up reminder video, which isn't an ad. It was just like literally just going out in an automation, and it was absolutely hilarious. And it was like a behind the scenes, like I gotta get ready for this webinar and this kind of stuff. And it was just so organically funny in the sense of like this felt unscripted, and that's really hard to do, you know. And it takes practice, and it doesn't mean that the first time you try something like that it's going to go well, but I think the more people become comfortable in front of cameras and comfortable like doing creatives, whether it's organic or paid, it's just going to get better, you know. And if you're doing it in a way that is true to you and your brand, then it's going to come through.
Yeah. I think the resounding thing from this podcast episode that I think you guys have both been touching on is just like stay true to you, show the humanness in you, be authentic, and let people into that, and having us stop this era of putting up this big AI front or this like, you know, it's scripted and put together and it has to look this certain way, and just getting back to like, no, this is who we are as a company. This is who I am as a person, and connecting with the viewer as if they're a real person too. Right. And yeah, if we can do that, I think we'll have some better ads out there.
So maybe we can kill Owl in the meantime, then that's perfect.
If you can kill an owl.
The big thing too is show, don't tell. You like show people who you are by showcasing your humor, showcasing those fun tidbits of your life, whether it's organic or implementing them in ads with a little bit of humor, or just that extra piece of showing people who you are, instead of how many times have we seen the TikTok of like they give you a crumb and then they're like, let me tell you for 40 seconds every qualification I've ever had in my life. I'm like, I don't want to go on your LinkedIn page. Tell me the thing. Like, say and show me who you are by showing me what you have to offer. Is it humor? Is it knowledge? Is it value? Give me that first, and then I'll be more interested in who you are. And I think that's a big thing where everyone's like, oh, but I have to tell them. They'll find out. If they care, if they're interested, if what you're offering is valuable and interesting enough, they'll go find out who you are, or they'll see more of you over time.
Yep. Yeah. We all just want a little more human connection. We all care about stories, and that goes a long way. You know, not just in being able to convey a message, but convey core values of who you are, you know, and what your company is trying to do for the industry. So yeah, totally agree with that.
So good. Well, Elly, thanks so much for hopping on and being a guest here on Ad Talk. We love having you on, and I'm sure after everybody watches this, they're gonna love that you came on too. So I'm sure it won't be the first time or the only time.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm always holding space for you, fans.
So great. Well, if you're listening to this and you want help with your ad creative, or you want an expert team to basically walk you through how to make your ads way better, go to adclass.com. We'd love to chat with you, brainstorm with you, and help you out. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys, and we will catch you on the next episode. Later.
Paintermayads.com.
Yeah, later.